Hello folks, IPMAT. Anyone who's thinking about IPMAT, you're thinking about IPMAT, Rohtak and Indore, 3 different exams. Course from 2 IM starts on March 31, 6 hours per day, big sprint till April 21, and then a bunch of mocks. Sign up, best wishes.
Let's look at these questions, which are a common set of instructions. There were about 6 questions in the exam. Let's read the instructions first. Complete the following sentences by choosing the most appropriate word or phrase from the options given below. So these are essentially word usage or phrase usage questions, which will test your vocabulary. So it can either be words that they're asking you for, or it can be phrases. Both are a part of vocabulary. So the stronger your vocabulary, the better you'll perform in these questions. But the good thing about this is they give you sentences, right? So there is context. You can understand the sentence. And in some cases, you might not know the meanings of all the words in the options, but you can still make an intelligent guess based on context. So it's a good thing. Direct vocabulary questions are very black and white. Now, let's say, for instance, if they ask you the meaning of anachronistic, either you know the meaning or not, right? So you can't really make a lot of guesses there. But here, because there is a sentence and there is context, you can make intelligent guesses. All right? Okay, let's look at question 1. Now, the first thing is you should always read the sentence first. Don't look at the options directly. First, read the sentence, understand it, make a broad guess in your head, and then look at the options. That's the best way to solve these questions. So let's look at this. If you ask me to give you a rough estimate for the cost of the project, blank, I would say 30 lakhs. All right. Now, what could fit here? Now, what you do is quickly, very quickly, don't spend a lot of time. Just make a broad guess in your head, if you can. In some cases, it won't be possible. So let's see if we can make a guess. If you ask me to give you a rough estimate for the cost of the project, that I would say 30 lakhs. Now, 30 lakhs is some sort of a rough estimate. Okay, so here it is difficult to make a guess, right? So leave it. If a guess doesn't come in your head, you can also think whether the word will be positive, negative, or neutral. That's also a guess you can make. We call that connotation in English. So is it a positive word? Is it a negative word? Is it a neutral word? Here, obviously, you won't have a negative word for sure, but it can be a neutral or a positive word. But we can't really make any guesses, so we'll go to the options. Okay, off the mark. All right, so if you ask me to give you a rough estimate for the cost of the project, off the mark, I would say 30 lakhs. Now, off the mark means inaccurate. Okay, that won't fit here. We are not talking about, see, the question itself, the statement itself says rough estimate. Rough estimates are not meant to be inaccurate. Rough estimates are not meant to be accurate. So saying that if you ask me to give you a rough estimate for the cost of the project, off the mark, I would say 30 lakhs won't make sense. There is no discussion of accuracy here because it's a rough estimate. So this won't fit. All right. Off the grid. Off the grid, it means something completely different. Off the grid means you are in some sort of a remote location. You're living in a remote location and you don't have access to things like electricity, water, or even like, let's say, a telephone network. Okay. So if you're living in a remote place, let's say in a cabin, without access to these public utilities, then you can say you're living off the grid. Okay, that's what it means. So it's a valid phrase, but that phrase does not fit here. This is for remote living without access to the public utilities. So it won't fit here in this context. Off the cuff. Okay, let's see that. If you ask me to give you a rough estimate for the cost of the project, off the cuff, I would say 30 lakhs. So off the cuff means spontaneously. Okay, or off the top of my head, right? You don't really know. It's a rough estimate. The person is asking you for a rough estimate. So obviously, the number that you'll give, you don't have time or you won't think a lot about that number because they've asked you for a rough estimate and they've asked you for a rough estimate now. So you don't have time to think about it. You don't need to think a lot about it because you're giving a rough estimate. So something that you sort of say spontaneously or without thinking too much, that is called as off the cuff. So off the cuff beautifully fits there, okay, because you're giving them a rough estimate. So let's park it. Off the mic. Off the mic simply means very literally off the mic. If you're talking on the mic, you're speaking on the mic. But if you say something off the mic, you cover it or you remove the mic and you say something off the record, that is off the mic. So it has a very literal meaning. Removing it, so not saying something in the mic. Let's say it's a private conversation. So, in press conferences, they do that. you kind of move away the mic and just talk to the person beside you so that it doesn't go on the mic, it doesn't go publicly. That's what off the mic means. It will not fit here, obviously. The only phrase that fits here is off the cuff, and therefore it is the right answer. So something, excuse me, something which is not prepared in advance, something which is called off the cuff. All right. Okay. This is not a very commonly used phrase, but it's a good phrase. You know, you'll hear that once in a while. People who speak good English tend to use this phrase. In the corporate world, also, I've sort of heard people using this phrase. So yeah, it's a good phrase to remember and use in your real life as well. Okay. Awesome. Let's go to number 2. The nasty comments made by strangers on the social media platforms about the actor made him dash. Now, if nasty comments are being made, you know, about a person, obviously it's going to make that person uncomfortable. So I was talking about guesses, right? This is the kind of a guess that you can make. Obviously, the actor will be uncomfortable after reading the nasty comments made by strangers on social media. So our guess is uncomfortable. Our guess is a word with a negative connotation. Okay. Now, if you make a guess like that, it will help you choose the right option quickly and more accurately because you have some sort of an idea. All right. Let's look at one. Ill at heart. Ill at heart is not a valid phrase in English. Okay. We don't say ill at heart. And if we're saying ill at heart, it will be in connection with the heart as an organ. You know, somebody who has a weak heart, like biologically speaking. But even then, we don't use this phrase. So this is not a valid phrase. You can remove it. Ill and ache doesn't mean anything. Okay, it's an invalid phrase. Ill and heart is also invalid. So 1, 2, and 3 are essentially invalid phrases in English. Okay, ill at ease is the only valid phrase, and it fits here. Ill at ease basically means uncomfortable, unsettled. So the guess that we made actually matches ill at ease, and that's the right answer. Okay, so it means uncomfortable, anxious, awkward, sense of unease or discomfort. It can be either physical or emotional. Okay, so make sure you remember these phrases. And of course, for your exam, you'll have to revise and read a lot and make sure that you know a number of phrases because anything can come in the exam. This is a very popular question type in IPMAT Indore, right? We saw that in 24. We've seen this in 23 as well. Okay. All right. Let's go to question number 3. The new car has disappointed its buyers in many ways, and good mileage is its only. Now think about this. Again, make a guess here. See, the new car has disappointed in its buyers in many, but then it says good mileage. So that means this is a good characteristic of the car. Okay, because it clearly said good mileage, and they say, and good mileage is its only. So only what? The guess that you can make is positive point. Okay, don't even look at the options. The new car is disappointed its buyers in many ways, and good mileage is its only positive point. It could be that, right? Only positive quality. All right, let's look at the options. Saving grace. Saving grace is a good fit here. Saving grace means that in an otherwise negative situation, okay, saving grace is the quality that is probably the only positive quality or the redeeming quality. The situation is very negative. The thing that you're talking about is very negative. And saving grace will denote a quality which is probably the only or that rare positive quality in an otherwise very negative situation. Okay, so the new car has completely disappointed its buyers. It's been a disaster, but good mileage is its only saving grace, is its only redeeming quality. Okay, it fits here. So let's park it. Saving pace. Okay, now this could confuse you, right? Saving grace, saving pace. Saving pace is a valid idiom in English, but it means something completely different. Saving pace is what a person does when they are extremely embarrassed. Okay, so let's say you've done something which has caused a lot of embarrassment, but you try to damage control in that situation. So in that damage control process is called as saving pace. Okay, so let's say if you're working in an office, right, and you make like a big goof up or a big mistake with your project. Okay, and because of that mistake, now the project is in danger. So in that situation, you'll probably try to do damage control. Okay, and that could be walking up to your manager and saying, hey, you know what, I'm really sorry I made this mistake, but I'll try to fix it as soon as possible. So that apology can also be saving face because you're saving yourself from major embarrassment. Okay, so you've done a mistake, but now you're trying to do damage control. So saving face is used in those situations. It will not fit here. All right. Saving praise is an invalid phrase. Doesn't mean anything. Saving case also is invalid. It doesn't mean anything. Saving grace is the only one that fits here. So it refers to a redeeming quality or a factor that makes an otherwise negative situation better. So largely negative. This is probably the only or one of the few positive qualities in that negative situation. Okay. All right. Let's look at 4. So it says Meena is very arrogant and class conscious. She refuses to acknowledge Sunil because she feels he's a man dash. Now, again, try to make a guess. Don't look at the options. I should have put an animation for options as well, but don't look at the options. Meena is very arrogant and class conscious. So she's extremely negative and elitist. So if she's extremely arrogant and class conscious, and it says she refuses to acknowledge Sunil because she feels he's a man dash. So that means here she's completely disregarding Sunil. It clearly says she's very arrogant and class conscious. And from the second part of the sentence, it looks like she's completely disregarding or ignoring Sunil. That is a broad guess. Okay, let's look at 1 of no importance. So to acknowledge Sunil because she feels he's a man of no importance. Yeah, this fits. Let's park it. Man of great importance. This won't make sense. This is clearly a negative word. Okay, that's why, see, if you can't guess the word, at least try to guess the connotation. Positive, negative, or neutral. Now you know that this will be negative. So then it can't be 2 because 2 is positive. So you can match the connotation. Connotation is nothing but the vibe of it. Okay. Because she feels he's a man of less importance. Okay. Now less importance. And the other one says man of some importance. See, some importance so will not fit it. Because she is very arrogant and class conscious. He's clearly disregarding him. So some importance is neutral or positive. It won't fit. Now we have less importance as well. So now think about it. What is better, of no importance or of less importance? Remember, she's very arrogant and class conscious. So if she's very arrogant and class conscious, chances are she thinks that Sunil is of zero importance or no importance. That's why less importance is, in English wise, it's correct. But if you look at the context, of no importance is a better fit because she's very arrogant and class conscious. So it's likely that she's completely disregarding. Okay, so that's why it's a little tricky. Some of you might have picked less importance, but no importance goes better with the context of being arrogant and class conscious. All right, and always remember, your job is to pick the best answer. All right, okay. So of no importance means something is insignificant, irrelevant, unimportant, does not have any value. All right. Let's look at question 5. Some big shots know how to escape the law even after they violate it. It's true, right? In the real world also it happens. The first name that probably comes to your mind is Vijay Mallya. I mean, he's absconding, he's not back and seems to have disappeared. Number of other examples in every country. Some big shots know how to escape the law even after they violate it. It is, however is a transition word, so the author will go on an opposite track. It is, however, the dash who are more often apprehended and punished. Now, see, it is saying big shots, then it has, however. Okay, so big shots, it says, can escape the law. But the small people are the ones who are often apprehended and punished because you have, however. So from the context, you can understand the author will go on a contrasting point. So the author was talking about big shots being able to escape the law. Now the author will probably talking about small people, people like us, who are more often than apprehended than punished. So that can be a broad guess. Let's look at this. Small fry. Small fry is a valid phrase, although it might sound unusual if you're not used to it, but small fry is absolutely valid. Okay, and small fry exactly means small people, not big shots, right? People who are not influential, the common man, right? Who are more often punished because they don't have the resources, they don't have the network, they don't have the ability to sort of run away from the law. Like, I mean, rich people have all the resources. I mean, Mallya just ran away to another country, now is settled down in London, and rumor has it he has like mansions in London. Mallya could afford it because he has a lot of money, he was a big guy. Probably us can't do it, right? So small fry is a valid phrase, although it might seem unusual, it fits here. Tiny shots does not make any sense. It's not a valid phrase. Tiny fish also, it's not a valid phrase. It doesn't make sense. Small fish does make sense. Okay, small fish is very similar to small fry. Okay, it also means people who don't have much influence, common men and women. So small fish also fits, and that's why this is a confusing question. Do we go with small fry or do we go with small fish? Now, although they have similar meanings, the context in which they are used is different. First of all, small fry is more common than small fish, number one. And number two, small fish is usually used in business context. Okay, like let's say if you talk about if there's a company, you have the CEO and you have the CEO's team, which are all the vice presidents and directors or the CMO or CTO. These are all the big shots. Okay, and the entry level people, okay, the freshers could be called as small fish, because in an organization you have a hierarchy. So people at top of the hierarchy are the big shots, the big guys, the CEO, the CTO, the CMO, or even like the vice presidents, presidents. And then you have the freshers who are right at the bottom of the hierarchy, and they could be called as small fish. So small fish is generally used in business context or where there is a clear hierarchical structure. In an organization, you have a clear hierarchical structure. But in this case, we are not really talking about a clear hierarchy structure. We're talking about society. It's not in the business context, right? So that's why small fry is better than small fish. It's a tricky one. Okay, a lot of you might have gone with small fish. But in the exam, see, this is where your question selection comes into picture. Now, in the exam, if you're confused between 1 and 4, and it's very 50-50 for you, that's not a question you should attempt. That's a gamble. Don't gamble in the exam. 50-50, you leave the question. You should at least be 80% sure or 70% sure before marking a question. At least I would say 80 is better, right? So in this case, if you're not 80% sure, you leave a question. So this is a tricky one. But small fry, because it's the more commonly used phrase, and also because small fish is used in business hierarchical context, small fry better fits in. Okay. So again, the first two people of little importance or influence, the ones who get caught while the powerful escape consequences. So very much related to number 5. Okay. Let's look at question 6. A few brands tailor their pants in such a way that it is easy for people with prosthetic legs to put them on. This is how they dash. Now again, try to make a guess. See, we are talking about tailors or brands focusing on people with prosthetic or artificial legs. So if a person's leg gets amputated, they use a prosthetic artificial leg, right? So there are brands which are catering to such people, which is great, right? It's inclusion. So it's amazing. This is how they dash. Now think about it. Again, it's difficult to make a guess about the blank, but ask yourself, will it be a positive word or a negative word or a neutral word? Most likely, this will be a positive word. Because if brands are doing that with people with prosthetic legs, they are being very inclusive. So most likely that blank will be a very positive word. Keep that in mind. So this is how they dash. Go to the extra level. Go to the extra level is not an idiomatic phrase. It's not a valid phrase or idiom in English, so we can eliminate it. Go to the extra level is wrong. We don't say that. Go to the extreme level doesn't sound right. It's also not a valid, we don't say go to the extreme level. It's not a valid phrase. And also, if you look at go to the extreme level, it has a slight negative connotation. We're looking for a positive word. So go to the extreme level is, we can eliminate it. Go the extra mile. Yes, this is a valid phrase. So that means they are going beyond what is expected out of them, or they are taking some really good extra initiative, right? They're exceeding expectations. That's what go the extra mile means. So the go the extra mile is great. So at work, you can go the extra mile. As a student, you can go the extra mile. So you're really going beyond what is expected out of you, which is always appreciated. So the go the extra mile is definitely, we'll park it. Go the entire mile is not idiomatic. It's not a valid English phrase. So you can eliminate it. Go the extra mile is indeed the answer here. Go the entire mile can confuse you, this is where your reading will come into picture. The more you read, the more you will be familiar with the right phrase. So means to put in additional effort beyond what is required or expected. Okay, so the answer is number 3. Let's look at question 7. It grieved me dash my friend's serious illness. So this, this can be a straightforward question. Might be difficult to make a guess, but think about it. Like if you come to know about your friend's serious illness, you would feel very sad, or you would feel very grieved about it. You would be very grieved about it. So again, you can make a broad guess, right? or just go to the options. It seems to be a straightforward question. Number one says to hear regarding. This might sound correct to you, but in English, grammatically, it's wrong. We don't say hear regarding my friend's serious illness. That is wrong. Hearing regarding is also completely wrong. It grieved me hearing regarding my friend's illness is grammatically wrong. It grieved me in hearing my friend's serious illness. This is also wrong. All the three options, 1, 2, and 3 are grammatically wrong. The only thing that works is it grieved me to hear of my friend's serious illness. So this is absolutely correct. And that's the right way to say this sentence or write this sentence. So it grieved me to hear of my friend's serious illness. To hear of simply means to become aware of something. Okay, so this is, 1, 2, 3 is just grammatically wrong. So if you have read good content, or even if in this case, if you speak good English, then you would know that hear of my friend's serious illness is the correct.
Hello, folks. Those of you who are thinking about IPMAT, the integrated 5-year course, you've got to think about it seriously. Parents who are listening in, you have to plan for this. After 12th standard board exams get over, there are a ton of exams. This IPMAT integrated course is a brilliant course. It's a 5-year course. Anyone who's interested in MBA, anyone who's saying, look, I don't want to do the mainstream thing, but I want to do something compellingly good, you must take this as part of your structure, as part of your set of options available. The number of seats is not too high, so you cannot say this is my only option, but you have to say, hey, I'm giving this a go. The exams to write, very clearly, these three. On IPMAT is on April 26th. IPMAT for Rohtak is on May 5th. Indore is for May 12th. This is the simplest exam. This is the toughest exam. So we have nice gradation. You have to prepare for it. It's not a bleeding obvious exam that you can just go and wing it. There's also data interpretation, logical reasoning section. We guys have a course for it, which covers a bunch of live sessions. We'll be doing 6 hours of live sessions for 3.5 weeks as a run up to the exam. Bunch of mocks that we will administer to them and discuss and help and mentor and plan all of that with detailed video solutions. Whatever we do, we'll have detailed video solution for the previous year papers. We'll discuss them also in great detail. Come up with a good strategy for them to attack this. And the young kids, will do our best to help them take this exam, help the students take this exam. All of this included. The course begins kind of almost immediately after the board exam ends. So it's on March 31st. So details of the course, how to sign up, when to pay, all of those are available in the description. Check that out, sign up and have fun. Best wishes.
Let's look at these questions. There are about 5 questions that have common instructions, and these are essentially sentence correction questions, which are a very common question type in IPMAT Indore. So let's read the instructions. It says, in each of the following sentences, the incorrect part of the sentence is underlined. Choose an alternative from the 4 given options so that the sentence is rendered correct. Okay, standard question, sentence correction question format. Now, sentence correction questions, for that, you will have to learn your grammar basics, because there's a lot of grammar that is tested in sentence correction. There are also sentence correction questions rules, common errors in these questions that you need to be well versed with. And also it can focus on vocabulary as well. So make sure to cover those 3 aspects. Now, let's look at question 1. It says, my Aunt Seema was the most generous of all the members of her family. Whenever we went out for dinner, she always insisted to pay for the meal. Okay, so it's wonderful. We all need an Aunt Seema in our family, right? So it said she was very generous, so that's why she was insisting. She wanted to pay the bill. Now, the underlined portion, right? First of all, look at the underlined portion and see if you think there is an error in it. Sometimes what happens is in certain questions, the underlined portion is error-free. In that case, you will have an option which is an exact copy of the underlined portion, and you will choose that. So basically, you're saying that there is no error in this underlined portion, and that's why I'm choosing the same option. In some questions, that can happen. Okay, in some questions, you won't have that. All right. Okay, so let's look at this. She always insisted to pay for the meal. Now, a quick scan of the options will tell you that to pay for the meal is not there. That means there is definitely an error in the underlined portion. Okay, and this is a little confusing because when you read this, she always insisted to pay for the meal. It might sound correct to you, because often when we're speaking, right, we in spoken English, we don't really follow grammar. We actually we end up making a lot of grammar mistakes while speaking, but that's absolutely fine. As long as you don't make glaring or basic mistakes, it's okay. Everyone makes grammatical mistakes while talking, and that's okay. Because when you're speaking, the objective is to make sure that the other person understands you, you understand the other person. So there are a lot of like leeway, there's a lot of leeway that people take with spoken English. So that's why this might seem correct to you, but a quick scan of the options will tell you it's not correct. Otherwise, they would have given you that to pay for the meal, but it's not there. That means there's definitely a mistake there. Okay. Now, let's look at the first option. She always insisted that she will be paying for the meal. Now, focus on the tense. It is important here. See, insisted is in past tense. Will be is in future tense. This doesn't make sense. Okay. She always insisted, and suddenly you change into future, it will not make sense. Insisted in the past. She was insisting in the past. So you can't say will be paying for the meal. There is an incompatibility in the tense. Okay. That's why this is gone. All right. Let's look at the other one. She always insisted that she pay for the meal. All right. Now, what is the difference? It says she always insisted to pay for the meal. Here we are including an additional word. She always insisted that she pay for the meal. Okay. This seems fine. Let's park this. Okay. Let's look at third. She always insisted that she had paid for the meal. Interesting. Now, this is also in past tense. Insisted is also in past tense. But think about this sentence. She always insisted that she had paid for the meal. So you're basically saying the paid part came before the insisted part. Isn't it? Think about it. She always insisted that she had paid for the meal. How does this make sense? She will insist first and then pay. How can the payment come first and then the insisting part? That doesn't make sense. Okay. And also we are talking about like this seems to be a pattern with Auntie Seema, right? She's most generous, so she usually pays for the bill. So it doesn't make sense to say she had paid for the bill. She will insist first and then pay for the bill. So that's why this is wrong. It doesn't make sense. It's incompatible here. Okay, let's go for the fourth one. She always insisted on and paid for the meal. This is grammatically wrong, completely wrong. Now, what is interesting here is what you need to understand, and remember this, when you're saying insisted, we don't use to with it. Typically, what we would do is when we're saying insisted, we will use on. Okay, but not this on. This construction is wrong. Another correct construction could be she always insisted on paying the bill. This is another, this option is not given to you. I'm just giving you this as extra information. With insisted, we use on, and then we use the ing form of the verb. So pay plus ing, pay is the verb, right? It's an acted. So pay plus ing. So the construction that we follow is insisted plus on plus the ing form of the verb. So insisted on paying the bill, insisted on paying for the meal, or yeah, exactly. So here it will be, she always insisted on paying for the meal. That would have been correct as well, but we don't have that. So that's why we are going for this one, which is also correct. She always insisted that she pay for the meal. Okay, so remember that with insisted, you will use on, and if you're using on, you will use the ing form, and that's why 4 is wrong. Okay, so 2 is correct, insisted that she pay for it. All right, now this is this can get a little tricky if your grammar concepts are not strong. So make sure you revise the grammar basics, especially tenses, prepositions. Those are very important. All right, let's go with excuse me. Let's go with question 2. Let's read the it's multiple sentences, so we'll read that first. Listening to the recording of cricket commentary from the past can be great fun, especially the last few overs when the best players are gone and the tailenders try their best to run between the wickets without getting out. This is when you realize that nothing much has changed, hasn't it? Now focus on the last part. This is when you realize it's about cricket commentary, listening to cricket commentary from the past. This is when you realize that nothing much has changed, hasn't it? Now, see what this underlying portion is doing is it is using a question tag. We call this question tag. This is often used in written and spoken English. So nothing much has changed, hasn't it? It's a way of writing. The author is ending with a question tag. Now, with question tags, there are certain rules that you need to remember. Okay, so let's not even look at the options. Let's first look at that. Now, is this right? So for instance, the first rule that you have to remember with question tag is you have a verb here, which is has. It's called an auxiliary verb, right? If when you have an auxiliary verb has, the question tag has to match the auxiliary verb. Okay, so if it's has here, the question tag should also be has or hasn't. Okay, but it has to be a variation of has. You can't say is or would there, because the auxiliary verb is has, the question tag has to match that. So has or hasn't, both will fit. The second thing is the question tag has to be opposite of the phrase. So for instance, when you're saying nothing much has changed, this is negative, isn't it? Because nothing much has changed. Because of nothing much, this phrase is negative. Nothing much has changed. So if the phrase is negative, your question tag has to be positive. Okay, so now again, I'm just repeating this. Remember this you'll have to remember as rules. The question tag should match the auxiliary verb. So it has to be has or hasn't or a variation of has. And then if the phrase is negative, the question tag should be positive. If the phrase is positive, the question tag should be negative. Here we have a negative phrase because of nothing much. So the question tag has to be positive. Okay, let's look at the options now. Nothing much has changed, hasn't it? Now see, this is exactly what I was talking about. They've given you the same thing. They haven't changed it. So you will pick this if you think there is no error in the underline. But here we know there is an error because it has to go from negative to positive. This is also negative right now, hasn't? So it doesn't match. You have to go from negative to positive. So therefore, this is wrong. Okay, let's look at this. Nothing much has changed, would it? Now, why is it wrong? It's wrong because the auxiliary verb, you're not matching that. You have to match the auxiliary verb. Would is completely different. Would is conditional. Has is different. It has to match the auxiliary verb. So this is gone. Nothing much is changed, isn't it? Now, this is grammatically wrong. Okay, it's wrong to use is here. In this construction, is will not fit. We will say nothing much has changed. Changing it to is just grammatically wrong. That's not the natural way of writing this. So that's why we will not use is here. It's wrong. So this is gone. It's grammatically wrong. Nothing much has changed, has it? Okay. Now look at this. You are saying, again, nothing much is same. This part is same. This is still negative because of nothing much. If this is negative, you have to make it positive, and therefore has is correct. Okay, so this can be confusing because you have has here, right? But consider the whole phrase, nothing much has changed. So that means it is negative, and therefore you have to make sure the question tag is positive. So that's why it will be has it. Okay, so the answer is 4. Nothing much has changed, has it. Remember those two rules. This is a tricky one. Okay, especially because you have that has there and nothing much. But again, if you know the rules and if you practice enough, you'll be able to crack it. Okay, let's look at question 3. When you play the Secret Santa, you're expected to buy a gift for whoever you assign without letting them know that you are the one buying the gift. I don't know if you folks have played Secret Santa, but I'm sure you have. It's a common thing nowadays, even in the corporate world. I've played it in like my previous companies and stuff. It's always fun, right? Puts you in a Christmas spirit. Okay, so we have for whoever you are assigned. So that's the underlined portion. Now we have to determine whether this is correct or not. Okay, so let's look at the options. It has whomever, who, whoever, and whom. All right, so first of all, you have to understand who and whom, or the extension of that is whoever or whom. Confusion happens in English because of this. You should make sure to understand the difference between who and whom for the exam, because these questions pop up quite often. Now, see, remember, who is for subject, okay, and whom is for object. This is a basic principle that you should know. Who is for subject and whom is for object. Subject, as I'm sure you know, if you don't know, make sure you clarify it. Subject is the doer of the action. Object is the receiver of the action. So who is used for subject, whom is used for object. Similarly, whoever is used for subject, whomever is used for object. So what we have to do is we have to first understand whether we are referring to a subject here or an object, and that will decide whether it should be whoever or whomever. Okay, so let's look at this. This question is very, very tricky. Okay, so pay attention. When you play the Secret Santa, you're expected to buy a gift for whoever you're assigned. Now, remember, when you're identifying the subject and object, do that for independent clauses. If you combine clauses, it's going to confuse you. So here we have whoever you are assigned, and that is a separate clause. So look at it separately and figure out whether whoever is subject or object. If you look at it in conjunction, if you combine it with for, you will get confused. Okay, so look at it as an individual clause. So let's write this down. Okay, we are saying whoever you are assigned. Okay, this can also be written again, just to make it simple. This can also be written as whoever is assigned to you. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to try and make it clearer, because I think here you'll have to understand my writing, which is a difficult task. My writing is not good, but whoever is assigned to you. You can write this sentence, and I'm rephrasing this just for simplicity, but it means exactly the same thing. You can say whoever you are assigned or whoever is assigned to you. Okay. Now here you have to understand that whoever is the subject. Okay. Is your verb, and you is your object. Okay, so whoever is the subject, is the verb, and you is the object. Whoever is assigned to you. Remember this sentence, if it's confusing you, it is because it's in passive voice. Active voice sentences are easier. You can look at an active voice and say, okay, for instance, Amit is playing cricket, right? So it's very easy to identify subject and object there. Amit is playing with the ball, right? But passive voice sentences, that's why it's getting a little tricky. So whoever is assigned to you or whoever you are assigned, both are in passive voice. Okay, and they mean exactly the same thing. So whoever is the subject there, and you is the object. Similarly here also, whoever is the subject. Okay, now because whoever is the subject, it has to be who or a variation of that, which is whoever. So that is correct. What is given to you seems to be correct, because whoever is replacing a subject. Okay, so we will not go towards whom or whoever. Whether it's who or whoever, we'll decide. But we're not going to go to whom or whoever, because it's not an object. Although it might look like an object, but consider it independently, break it down, and then you'll understand that whoever is subject. So we have to stick with who. Whom is wrong. Okay, although it looks like it should be whomever, it's not whomever. Okay, so quickly one will go away because that's whomever. We're not talking about object here. Whom is also gone because we're not talking about object. It is between who or whoever. Now, who is wrong because who is used in direct questions. Who are you? Right? In direct questions, we use who. In this case, using who will be wrong. There's no question here. Okay, so therefore we will not use who. Whoever you are assigned is absolutely correct. That means there is no error in this sentence. And that's why we're using option 3, which is a copy of what has been given to you. Okay, very, very tricky question. I would say like one of the trickiest grammar questions in this exam. A lot of students would have made a mistake and picked whomever. Okay, but no, this is a subject. And remember to consider the clause independently. Right now, just for the sake of discussion, right? Let's look at another one. Sorry, I'll go back. I'm not going to remove that. See, if this is still confusing you, whoever you are assigned, let's look at this. Okay, Amit is assigned to Sanjana. Okay, let's say we're talking about a class or classroom monitor or houses or whatever, right? Or group leaders. Let's say Sanjana is a group leader, Amit is a part of a team. So Amit is assigned to Sanjana. Now here Amit is the subject. Okay. is assigned, okay, you can consider that as the verb, and Sanjana is the object. Okay, this is again in passive voice. So Amit is the subject. Now, this sentence will probably be clearer to you. Instead of Amit, we are saying whoever. So that's also the subject. Okay, all right, I hope this is clear. Let's look at question 4. Justin couldn't understand why his friend had refused to work in a company that offered him a huge salary. If it had been him in his friend's place, he would definitely accepted such an offer. And that part is underlined. Now here we are talking about a hypothetical situation. Okay, obviously, because Justin is not really in that situation. He's hypothesizing or imagining that had he been in his friend's place, he would have done this, right? So it's a hypothetical situation. So let's keep that in mind while we're solving the question. Okay. Excuse me. He would have definitely have accepted such an offer. Now here have is repeating, which is unnatural. Okay, you don't need to repeat have. And also read it. He would have definitely have accepted such an offer is grammatically wrong. There is no need to repeat have there. It's redundant. So this is gone. He would definitely accepted such an offer. This is the same thing. Okay, they've copied the same thing. That means if you choose this, you're saying there is no error in the statement. So let's park this. He would have definitely accepted such an offer. Okay, this sounds okay. Let's park this. He have definitely accept such an offer. Okay, now let's look at this as well. He would have definitely accept such an offer. The difference between 3 and 4 is this is accepted, this is accept. Let's park this as well. Okay, now since we are talking about a hypothetical situation, we will typically use would. Not always, but in this case, since we're talking about a hypothetical situation, we will use would. That is the construction we follow in English. Okay, so would is definitely has to be there. And the good thing is that would is given to you in the question itself. So understand it's there because of the hypothetical situation. Now, because you're using would, typically the construction that we use is would have plus past participle of the verb. So the construction that we use for grammar rules is would have, because you're using would, you will use have, it will be would have plus past participle. Now don't get confused by participle. Participle is, for instance, if the verb is assigned, the past participle of that is assigned. Okay. Similarly, the verb here that we're talking about is accept. The past participle of that would be accepted. That's the base verb, right? We're talking about accepted. So it should be would have plus past participle. That means it should be accepted. And the have is essential because we're using would. Now let's look at 2, 3, and 4. He would definitely accept such an offer. Now, what is the problem? There is no have here. Have is missing. And because you're using would, you need have. So this is gone. He would have definitely accepted such an offer. So you have would have, and you also have the past participle. So this seems absolutely correct. Let's look at 4. He would have, great, definitely accept. No, this is wrong. You'll have to use the past participle. So it has to be accepted. So therefore, this is wrong as well. The answer is number 3. Okay, so here you have to be aware of these grammar rules. And that's why I said for sentence correction, grammar is important. It's a hypothetical situation. So we're using would. Because we're using would, we're saying would have. And then the construction is would have plus past participle. Therefore, it is accepted and not accepted. Okay. Let's look at question 5. The setting of a story affects the story's plot. Okay, now they're trying to confuse you. If you scan the options, you'll see they're trying to confuse you between affect and effect. So commonly confused words. Affect is influence. Okay, effect is outcome. All right. So if A affects B, that means A is influencing B. Effect is outcome. Here it says the setting of a story influences the story's plot. So we have to use affect. There is no outcome here. So we have to use affect with an A. Therefore, we will eliminate 2. Okay. Now let's look at this. The setting of a story affect the story's plot. No, it will be affects. Right? It has to be, because we're talking about setting of a story, which is singular. If it's a singular subject, it has to be a singular verb, right? So we will say affects and not affect. So this is wrong. Affects the story's plot. We need to use S, and remember that, okay? Don't get confused. When you add an S to a noun, okay, like there is car and you make it cars, it becomes plural. Adding an S to a noun makes it plural. Verbs function in the opposite way. Okay, so when you add an S to a verb, it becomes singular. That's why here we're talking about affect. This is plural. And affects is singular. Remember that. It's a basic subject verb agreement rule. When you add S to a verb, it becomes singular. Okay, so therefore we have to use affects here because this is singular subject. All right, so setting of a story affects the story's plot. This seems correct. We'll park it. Setting of a story affects the story plots. Now look at the difference. Here we're talking about story's plot, and here it's saying story plots. We are talking about one single story. So we will not say story plots. So this is wrong. Story's plot is absolutely correct. We will need an apostrophe here because we're talking about a singular story and the plot of that story. So we will need an apostrophe. So affects the story's plot is absolutely correct. And that is the answer. Okay, it's not a very difficult question, provided you don't get confused between affect and effect, and also remember the subject verb agreement basically. Let's look at these set of questions, which were essentially para completion questions. They had common set of instructions. There were about 4 questions. So let's read the instructions first. Each of the paragraphs given below has a sentence missing, which is indicated by a blank. From the choices given below each paragraph, choose the sentence that seems most logically appropriate to complete the paragraph. So standard para completion question, they've removed a line from the paragraph, given you 4 options, and you have to choose the option that best completes the paragraph. Okay, so para completion questions, there is a certain strategy to solve it. I'll demonstrate that with the first question. I'll go through the strategy steps as well. So please do consider following that strategy because it will improve your accuracy and marks as well in these kind of questions. Okay, so let's look at first question. They've given a blank right in the beginning, so that means the starting statement of the paragraph has been taken away. All right, so let's read the second sentence. Conflicts are now brewing over rivers and river basins shared by many countries around the world. This is not unexpected, given the fact that more than 200 water bodies are shared by 2 or more countries. Strife over water, for example, is erupting throughout the Middle East from the watersheds of the Nile to the Tigris, and Euphrates rivers. All right, so read the entire paragraph. You'll understand that the paragraph is talking about or focusing on water conflicts between different countries. Countries are fighting over water. And the author also says this is not unexpected, or in other words, this is expected because these 200 water bodies are shared by 2 or more countries. Okay, so clearly that's the main idea of the paragraph: conflicts over waters, conflicts between different countries. Now we have to look for the starter statement, the starting statement. Starting statements typically in a paragraph tend to be broader. Okay, typically, again, there can be exceptions, but typically the author would start with a broad statement and then go to specifics. So do keep that in mind. And of course, whatever you choose has to be closely connected to the discussion in the paragraph. All right, let's look at 1. With water becoming increasingly scarce and development of new sources of water extremely costly, international water tensions are expected to rise. Interesting. So it talks about international water tensions, which is the focus of the paragraph, right? We're talking about water tensions between different countries. International water tensions, it's very similar. So this sentence is closely related to the paragraph, and try plugging this in. So if you read quickly, with water becoming increasingly scarce and development of new sources of water extremely costly, international water tensions are expected to rise. Conflicts are now brewing over rivers and river basins shared by many countries. This is not unexpected, given the fact that more than 200 water bodies are shared. The flow seems absolutely fine. It is also related. We will park this. Okay, let's look at the next one. Second, it might be a cliche, but given how scarce it is, water is the new oil of the 21st century. Okay, so this is also talking about scarcity, right? The paragraph is also talking, it is talking about conflicts, right? But that could be related to scarcity, right? I'm just trying to see if there's any sort of direct mention of scarcity, but it's a fight over water. So kind of the scarcity is implied. Otherwise, the countries wouldn't fight, right? So this sentence seems to be related, right? And it's quite a broad statement. It says, might be a cliche, but given how scarce it is, water is the new oil of the 21st century, indicating that water is very crucial. It's a very crucial resource, right? Like whenever they say something is the new oil, that means that it's a very crucial resource. It's a very much sought after resource, right? So because this scarce, water is much sought after and it's as valuable as oil in the 21st century. Fair enough, it might fit. Okay, but then we have to look for a sentence which is closely related to the discussion. This sentence doesn't talk about the tension related to water between different countries. Okay, although it talks about scarcity and the importance of water, it doesn't talk about the tensions between countries. One directly talks about international water tensions, right? So we'll park it, but it's unlikely that this is the answer because we've already seen one. One seems to be a better fit. It's closely related. Okay, let's look at 3. Freshwater is increasingly in short supply, with nearly 2/3 of the global population living in water stress conditions. Okay, so it is also talking about scarcity, short supply. It's talking about fresh water specifically, and saying 2/3 of the global population living in water stressed conditions. Could fit, but again, there is no implication or mention of international water tensions or tensions between different countries, right? Fresh water being in short supply, and people living in water stress conditions could be due to different reasons. It could be due to a drought. It could be due to rains, being irregular, or it could be due to poor water conservation methods. It could be due to different reasons. So again, the implication of international water tensions is not there. One has that. So that's why, again, one seems to be better than 3. We'll park it, but one seems to be better than 3. Let's look at 4. The world does not consider water to be the scarce resource it is. Now, this, hopefully you picked up on this. This is not related to the paragraph because it's opposite to what the paragraph is saying. If the world does not consider water to be a scarce resource, then why are the countries fighting over it? The rest of the paragraph talks about countries fighting over water. You can't put this sentence there. Authors don't write paragraphs like that. This is completely opposite to what the rest of the paragraph is saying. So this is easily eliminated. Between 1, 2, and 3, all 3 of them can fit. 2 and 3 can fit potentially as well, but 1 is the best answer because 1 is very closely related to the discussion in the paragraph, mainly because of international water tensions. Okay, so keep that in mind while you're picking the sentence. So we're going to eliminate this, we're going to eliminate this, and we will pick the best answer, which is 1. Can be a little tricky because some of you might have gotten confused between 1, 2, and 3. But remember, we are choosing 1 because it's most closely related to the discussion in the paragraph. Okay. All right. Let's look at paragraph 2. A study of the social and cultural. So first thing is you always read the paragraph. Okay. Sorry, I didn't talk really about the strategy, but first thing is you always read about the paragraph and try to understand what the paragraph is saying. That's the first step. Let's do that. A study of the social and cultural context of Indian poetry in English reveals several important insights into its origin of Indian poetry in English. Indian poetry in English began in Bengal, the province where the British first gained a stronghold. In addition, this poetry was a largely urban phenomenon centered in Calcutta. Okay, so till now the paragraph has tried to figure out the origin of Indian poetry in English. Then it says it began in Bengal, and in addition, it says this poetry was a largely urban phenomenon in Bengal centered in Calcutta. Okay, so it began in Bengal and centered in Calcutta because it was in Indian poetry in English was largely an urban phenomenon. Then there is a blank, and then we have then. It says then gradually it moved to other urban centers such as Madras and Bombay. Even today, Indian poetry in English remains largely urban. Moreover, because English was an elite language, Indian poets writing in English came from the upper classes. So again, the focus of the paragraph is tracing the origins of Indian poetry in English. And then the author definitely focuses on how Indian poetry in English was an urban phenomenon. Started in Calcutta, but then gradually moved to other urban centers. Okay, so you've understood the paragraph. That's the first step. Now focus on the blank. Now look for clues. Now it clearly says then. Then indicates a sequence of events. Okay, so the preceding sentence before the blanks, then you have a sentence, and then it says then gradually it moved away from Calcutta in Madras and Bombay. So keep that in mind. Okay, focus on the then. So whatever you're plugging in before then, there has to be some kind of sequence of events there, right? Of course, now since the sentence is in the middle of the paragraph, when we fit the sentence, it has to make sense as a unit. This whole unit has to make sense. Preceding sentence, the blank, and then the succeeding sentence. The flow has to be smooth, and then that will be the right answer. Okay, because sentences in a paragraph are obviously connected to each other. Okay, all right, let's look at one. The rulers encouraged the natives to write poetry about India only if their mother tongue was English. Okay, now when we're looking at this unit, we are talking about it being an urban phenomenon, being in Calcutta and then moving away to other cities. One doesn't seem to be connected to that. Okay, we're talking about the locations, right? So one doesn't seem to be connected. So let's eliminate one. Number two, English was seen as an elite language, and so the British felt that only they could use it for poetry. Again, there is no mention of location. We are talking about Calcutta, and then after the blank, we are moving away from Calcutta. There's no location. Fine, the paragraph later talks about elite language, but the blank is here. Okay, so that's why if you put this sentence here and you can plug it in and read it, it will seem abrupt. So maybe the sentence comes later in the article somewhere because this must have been picked up from an article, right? But that's not what we're worried about. We've been given this paragraph, the sentence doesn't fit there. Okay, let's look at 3. The British had decided that poetry about India could reach a larger audience if written in Calcutta. Okay, now interesting. So it does talk about the location. So now that could be the right answer. Let's plug this in. So let's read it. In addition, this poetry was a largely urban phenomenon centered in Calcutta. The British had decided that poetry about India could reach a larger audience if written in Calcutta. Then gradually it moved to other urban centers. The flow doesn't seem to be okay. The preceding sentence and the blank seem to be fine. But talking about saying that the British had decided that poetry could the poetry could reach a larger audience if written in Calcutta. So that means the British were focusing on Calcutta. So if the British were focusing on Calcutta, then why is the next sentence talking about moving to other urban centers? The flow seems to be abrupt. Always look at the flow. The paragraph has to flow smoothly, right? So if the British were focusing on Calcutta, then why did it move? Seems abrupt. I'll park it because it has Calcutta, but let's look at 4. In fact, poetry writing for the first 50 years was confined to a few families who were residents of Calcutta. Let's plug this in. In addition, this poetry was a largely urban phenomenon centered in Calcutta. In fact, poetry writing for the first 50 years was confined to a few families who were residents of Calcutta. Then gradually it moved to other urban centers. This makes sense, right? I hope you're able to recognize the flow. So it says centered in Calcutta. This sentence elaborates on it, talks about Calcutta, talks about the fact that it was confined to a few families, and then gradually moved to other urban centers. So between 3 and 4, 4 is definitely a better fit, and that is the answer. Okay, this, especially as compared to the first question, is manageable. All right, provided you follow the right approach. Excuse me. All right, let's look at question 3. So we'll read the first paragraph. We'll read the paragraph first. In the late 1960s, architect Charles Correa began his career as an urban planner, creating New Bombay, now Navi Mumbai, an urban area that provided housing and job opportunities for many who lived across the harbor from the original city. Okay, manageable sentence. In the midst of overpopulated cities, he tried to create quasi-rural housing environments. In all of his urban planning commissions, Correa avoided high-rising housing solutions. Okay, so understand what the paragraph is saying. That's the first step. So we're talking about Correa, who was an urban planner who created Navi Mumbai, or New Bombay, as it was earlier called, to provide housing and job opportunities for many who lived away from the original city, which is Mumbai. And in the midst of overpopulated cities, Correa tried to create semi-rural housing environments, or housing environments that seemed rural, or rural-style housing environments. Quasi here can be interpreted as he tried to create rural-style housing environments in the midst of overpopulated cities. In all of his urban planning commissions, Correa avoided high-rising solutions. Okay, so he was more inclined towards creating rural-style housing environments in urban areas And because he was about rural style housing environments, he avoided high rising solutions. So it makes sense. So keep the discussion in mind. The sentence that's coming up after this has to be connected to the discussion in the paragraph, and most closely, it should be connected to the preceding sentence. Okay, we'll consider the entire paragraph, but we'll focus most on the preceding sentence. All right. Okay. His early work combined traditional architectural values with the modernist use of materials. This is not connected to him avoiding high-rising housing solutions. And also, it says traditional with modernist. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Korea trying to create quasi-rural housing in the midst of overpopulated cities. This is not connected. This seems out of scope. We'll eliminate it. He's particularly noted for his sensitivity to the needs of the urban poor. Okay, now we are talking about poor here, or rather, let's see that career creating new as an urban housing and job opportunity. Well, we're not really talking about poor specifically. Okay, we are talking about quasi-rural, but that doesn't necessarily mean poor. It could be middle class as well. So there is no indication of poor here. We can't really infer that. We don't have enough evidence from the paragraph. So saying that he's particularly noted, option 2, if you plug that in, it will be abrupt. He's not really talking about urban poor specifically. It's not closely connected. Okay, especially given the preceding sentence spoke about avoiding high-rising housing solutions. Let's look at 3. He focused on low-rise dwelling solutions that emphasized the human scale and created a sense of community. Now you see the connect. You might have immediately gotten a trigger in your head that, oh, this is connected. Because he avoided high-rising solutions. That's what the preceding sentence is saying. And then you say he focused on low-rise dwelling solutions. Why did he focus on that? To emphasize the human scale and create a sense of community. Beautiful fit. So we'll park it. Number 4, considerations of the Indian climate drove many of his decisions. This is not connected at all. And we already have 3, which is a very close correction. The answer is 3. Okay, I would say this is a manageable question. Again, if you follow the right approach. Okay, let's look at question 4. The concept of the villa and other European ideas came to Lucknow with foreign soldiers, travelers, and adventurers. For the Nawabs of Lucknow, architecture became the physical manifestation of the new status and a way of proclaiming their alignment to the new power block. Okay, so understand this can be slightly complex. So the concept of the villa came to Lucknow. So it was a European idea, and it came to Lucknow with foreign soldiers, travelers, and adventurers. Okay, Nawabs of Lucknow, architecture became the physical manifestation of the new status. What does that mean? That means Nawabs had a high status. So their architecture was a representation of the new status. Okay, so manifestation here means representation. So they have a certain high status, and their architecture physically represented that status. So that means, you can, it implies that they probably lived in very lavish, architecture, very luxurious architecture, very rich architecture, which was a representation of their status. Okay, and a way of proclaiming their alignment to the new power block. All right, so then we have the blank. So we've understood the preceding part of the blank. Now let's understand the succeeding part. Villas hence provided an ideal substitute. It has the word hence, which is a big clue. So it's saying hence, that means the sentence before this will give you the reason. Why did villas provide an ideal substitute will be answered here. That's how hence is used. Okay, if you understand cause effect, right? Hence is typically used to represent a cause effect relationship. So you have the cause or the reason here, okay? And then the effect or the outcome is this. So villas provided an ideal substitute, that's the outcome or that's the effect. What was the reason for that? That will be in the preceding sentence. So keep that in mind. Europe sold to the Nawabs the idea of villas based on designs and publications carried by them and often aided by memory. The building chosen as the prototype for the famous Dilkusha Koti was a country house in Northumberland. Okay, so that means the buildings that were sort of built or was created in Lucknow started being modeled after villas in Europe. Okay, and then the example that's given is the famous Dilkusha Koti, which was in Lucknow, was modeled after a country house in Northumberland, which was a villa. Okay, so that's just an example. All right, great. So we've understood the preceding part and the succeeding part. Whatever we choose will have to flow very well. Okay, with the preceding part and the succeeding part as well. And remember, succeeding part is the hence, so it will validate that cause-effect relationship as well. Okay, let's look at one. The villa became the backdrop to both the private as well as the court life of the Nawabs. All right, can this fit? If I fit this here and I read the sentence, so and a way of proclaiming their alignment to the new power block, the villa became the backdrop to both the private as well as the court life of the Nawabs. Villas hence provided an ideal substitute. Fair enough, it can fit. It can fit in the first sentence. So let's park that. Okay, sorry, the first option can fit. Let's look at two. The Nawabs chose to live in villas because they were easier to construct than palaces. If I put it there and then I say villas hence provided an ideal substitute, it doesn't make sense. Consider the context of the paragraph. We are not talking about ease of construction. That's not the reason why Nawabs were drawn to villas. Nawabs were drawn to villas because they were looking at architecture, choosing architecture that could represent their status. Okay, so they potentially found villas as a good representation of their status, right? Villas are generally like lavish and luxurious. So that's why they were drawn to villas. The reason was they were choosing it for two reasons. One, they wanted something to represent their status, and also their way of proclaiming their alignment to the new power block. Ease of construction was not a reason at all. So this is out of scope, we'll eliminate. The Nawabs were attracted to European ideas in architecture because of their foreignness. This is also not connected to the discussion. They were attracted, that has already been given to you. They were attracted because of the representation of status and the alignment to the new power block. So this is also out of scope, we'll eliminate it. Number four, the Nawabs of Lucknow fancied building palaces that resembled British ancestral homes. Okay, now, when you read this, it says that resembled British ancestral homes. And later on, you clearly have an example where you have Dilkusha Koti, which was modeled after a country house in Northumberland. So this sentence is very closely connected to that, isn't it? Okay, and let's start, of course, we'll have to fit it and see. So let's read that. So, as a way of proclaiming their alignment to the new power block, the Nawabs of Lucknow fancied building palaces that resembled British ancestral homes. Villas hence provided an ideal substitute. That sounds logical. The flow is good. They fancied building palaces. Okay, they wanted to build palaces that resembled British ancestral homes, and villas were European. So villas hence provided an ideal substitute. Okay, so it flows very well, and it's also connected to this sentence. Okay, so one can also be here. One also seems to flow well, but four has an additional advantage. It is connected to this. So that's why you have to choose between 1 and 4, and 4 seems to be a better fit primarily because of this reason. Okay, so that's why 4 is the answer. This is a tricky one. Okay, a lot of you might have gone with 1. That confusion is justified in this one. But ideally, when you're solving this, when you would have solved this question, ideally you should be stuck between 1 and 4. Okay, and then wonder, okay, should I go with 1? Should I go with 4? If you're able to resolve the tie and understand that 4 is better, great. But if you're 50-50, then you should not attempt this question. You should say, okay, I'm not sure, and you leave this question. The ability to spot difficult questions and leave them is very important. Okay, so this is, I think, out of the 4, this is definitely the trickiest. All right.